Welcome to the Contractor Success Forum. Today we are talking about continuity planning and why, if you have built a construction company, it is so important to protect it. Here on the Contractor Success Forum, our mission is to provide game changing financial education for contractors to help you be more profitable, grow, and succeed in your business. And who is here to help us do that? As usual, Stephen Brown with the McDaniel Whitley Bonding and Insurance Agency. And I'm Wade Carpenter with Carpenter and Company CPAs. And Stephen, I know you were talking about calling this one expecting the unexpected.
Yeah, expecting the unexpected is, gosh, the worst thing that can happen is that something happened to you as the owner of a company
Right.
or multiple owners. Your company ceases when you cease to exist. There's no doubt about it. But there's a whole lot to continuity planning besides just planning in case of your death. Continuity means continuing something without any essential changes. You got something good going, you want to continue it, right?
Right.
And so, from a bonding standpoint, continuity planning has nothing to do with planning for emergencies and contingencies. In their mindset, continuity planning is just what happens if you die? Who's going to take over the business? Who's going to finish the projects? That's what they care about.
I think there's a lot more to it I think we're going to get into, but you and I both have, for the last couple of years, we've talked about different situations where we've had contractors die unexpectedly, but I think we'll also get into maybe like being disabled. But like
Right.
in my business, I think about, say, if you had a CPA firm and it was tied to one person, then if that person died, how many people leave that CPA firm?
Sure.
And in a construction company, we have the same thing as well. You got to finish a project, but if your key employees leave, you're not able to finish those projects, those kind of things. So I think that's some of the things we're going to kick around today.
Sure.
So,
Sure. All of that is huge. I think the most thing that most contractors would think about is key employees leaving. That's the number one thing. And how do you plan to keep them from not leaving? One thing that you can do is you can put in place a stay bonus into their employment agreement. And this stay bonus, of course, has to be funded somehow. It comes out of your cash or life insurance. But the whole idea is if you do a stay bonus and you tie it to profit, you don't want that employee to wait to get their profit on a job that they may or may not get because they're not in control of the pricing and everything. They're not in
right,
control of the risk. You want them to think that way, but the most important thing to a key employee might be just look, we're going to give you a bonus to stay that's going to be so good that you won't leave until these projects are completed. You all assume that all of your employees want to stay. You're one big family, right? But each one of these key employees has to look after their own family. So that's one way to do that. Another thing is the morale of the company. When a leader or owner of the company dies, there's just a vacuum of leadership, Wade.
hmm,
There's inner squabbling and people fight, well, I do this or I do that. There's always someone that you really would least want to run the company that kind of steps in and starts acting like they're the head honcho. That's always the case.
right. Well, I think about it too, like for what I did in my business. So, as a CPA firm, I have to have a CPA. So, I had some agreements with some CPAs that I'm friends with that we mutually, like, if something happened to me, you step in and make sure this either the firm got sold or whatever.
Hmm.
Or we had what was called like practice continuation agreement. So, maybe one of them would take over the practice or something like that.
Hmm.
But I also see that in a lot of construction companies where they will do something like, hey, this person's been a key employee. They're going to become an owner. They're going to end up owning it. And we have this agreement in place where there's going to be some leadership and all this stuff. And I mean,
Sure.
you want to talk about that some?
Yeah, you could be as simple as instead of key bonus employee, working out a key bonus agreement with a competitor that will finish the jobs for you. You might say, if something happens to me, I know my wife doesn't want to handle it. I don't want to do all the planning for the employees to handle it. Let's just not rock the boat. That's a real easy way to work something out. You just have to fund that. You have to make sure that your competitors going to take over work, know that not only is this set up, this is what's going to happen in case of my death. This is how you're going to come in and finish these projects. And that's one thing. And then, as we talked about, other part of continuity planning is planning for your key employees to buy the company someday, to share in profits. There's a lot to that. Key man life insurance is another thing that can keep a key employee from leaving. You buy an insurance policy on that key employee, and then at retirement, that employee gets the policy with the cash value that's in there. That's one idea. Or you get a key man life insurance that just pays you if something happens to one of your partners, because they have to be replaced and there's going to be all kind of expenses and headaches because of losing that partner. So that's another part of it. And so the continuity plan is literally putting in writing with your partners, if you have it, what's going to happen in the case any of these something happens to any of these partners, because you are going to be working with your partner's spouse and their attorney
Yeah.
if you haven't planned it ahead.
I know I've seen that a few times over the years that spouse comes in and the other partner does not want that spouse in, and they have no idea how to run that business, and they may have a toxic situation. It also could be like divorce or something like that that happens where somebody comes in and you got an unexpected owner. So there's a lot of things to think about here.
Okay. Yeah, you're right, Wade. There's just a lot of things to think about. But a continuity plan, the ones I've seen, I've got numerous examples. I know you do too. But a simple continuity plan is just something that is a plan that puts in writing exactly what's going to happen. And here's the most important thing about having that plan in writing is when you die, your estate goes through probate. And when there's an ongoing business involved, the judge sometimes will appoint someone, usually an attorney, to oversee that ongoing business until it can be liquidated or whatever the will states that you want done with it. So it's up to the probate court to enforce your wishes. And that's the great thing about it is they are there to enforce your wishes. But on an ongoing business, when it's clearly stated what's going to happen and that judge appoints someone to continue the business, or if there's a key family member that is going to do it, they're going to report back to the judge that they have done this according to the will and they're held accountable for that. And
Right.
so that's another reason it just needs to be done in writing.
Well, a great point there is number one, if you got this agreement in place and you get to a point who is going to be running this business rather than some lawyer that knows nothing about your business and all they're worried about is like closing this estate out one way or another. They may not have the best interest at heart. They may not gel with their current employees and run people off.
They may not even want to liquidate the business quickly because they're getting fees
Exactly.
overseeing it. It's amazing all the things you've seen. I used to do a lot of work in probate court with Mons, and I've seen all sorts of crazy things. But, when you talk about continuity, if you have a father and son scenario, and this is just based on a true story, is that the father was going to leave everything of the company to the son at his death. And that's
Right.
pretty standard. But it didn't say anything in that continuity agreement about if he became disabled. And in this case, the father got dementia, got mean dementia, and was running off employees, forgetting key customers' names, screwing up bids. And the son had to get him out of there to get permanent care, and then had to keep making money through the company to pay for his care. And he wasn't able to because he wasn't the owner.
Right. I
So,
know you shared that story with me, and that was a pretty amazing story, but it's definitely something that obviously could happen
well,
very
that's
easily.
that's the point. These continuity plans need to be looked at regularly. A lot
Right.
of times one will be in place and they're not checked for years. But things change. The valuation of the business changes. What you originally agreed to, you think may not work so well, especially if you have a partner. You know the personality of the partner and what it will be like working through his estate or her estate if something happened to them. So, got to check these plans regularly. You got to do it first and you got to check on it. And
Right.
also, I would say the most important thing is if you haven't done this yet, just put together a simple will. If you don't have a will, remember you can handwrite it. You don't have to have an attorney to do it, but a will with your signature that's witnessed is the first thing that a judge looks at when he decides how to probate your estate.
Right.
Got to have a will.
Yeah. I guess another thought, you brought up the key man insurance, but you also, we could say key man or key employee, but you've got project managers out there running a job. And so I've also seen where, say, we have something like pay to stay bonus,
Hmm?
to where like you get a bonus if you finish out this project, as opposed to the owner dies and you abandon the project, you're probably going to tank the company. And so things like pay to stay, just even if these project managers, they get a bonus to stay there and make it well worth their while. But if a project manager walks out and they're the only one that knows what's going on with the job, that can be devastating.
Sure. Key employees that have to be replaced among their death that are producing income for you have to be replaced, and it costs you money. But it's also a good way to keep an employee as an extra incentive to stay till retirement,
Right.
because you own the policy. But also, a lot of times, if you have partners or multiple partners, if you have one partner, definitely you get life insurance policy that upon that partner's death, it pays you so you can buy out their half of the business. And it's all spelled out in the continuity agreement. So that's why it's called being funded by life insurance. And
Right.
why not? Because it's the death that you're concerned about. And it's a whole lot easier to finance something like that through a life insurance policy if you can get it on each partner. And in this situation, you may have two partners that are in not equal health situation. You can work around that. There's more premium for one that one's older, one's younger. But however you look at it, you can work that out equitably.
Yeah.
And these proceeds, if you set it up correctly from the life insurance, come to you without being taxed.
Right.
So it's important how you pay those life insurance. Your CPA and your life insurance agent can help you with that.
Yeah. Well, can we change direction a little bit? I'm going to put you on the
Sure.
spot for a minute. Since you are in the business of risk, so are there ways we can assess the risk that a contractor might have that you can think
Yeah.
about or we can talk about?
Yeah. As a contractor, you look at risk all the time. You're weighing risk of a construction project, of buying a piece of equipment, of hiring this person. Are you going to have enough work for them on the project? What about weather delays? What about material delays, shortage? You can do continuity planning or risk analysis for those type of scenarios. Of course, we were talking about that earlier. But from understanding the risk of what happens is if you don't plan for your continuity,
Right.
you might say, well, look, they'll work it out. I'll be dead. Who cares? But that's not the way to think about it. Of course, that's a obnoxious way to look at it. But again, that may be just a practical way of you looking at it. But what you're doing is you're setting in place all the things that you have to do to make your company succeed. And it's forcing you to think about how you're going to do that. For example, when I came to McDaniel Whitley, Mike Daniel, Richard Whitley are two of my best friends, and we worked for a year on our contract because we were not going to let our friendship be hurt by us working together. And there's been a couple of times over the years, one of us brought something up in that contract, and the other ones of us just laughed. Yeah, but you right about that? Yeah. I mean, it's just the right way to do things.
Yeah.
But did that answer your question about
Well,
analyzing?
absolutely. Is this something that do you help contractors do these risk assessments,
Oh,
or
yeah, all the
do
time.
you like if somebody wasn't your client, would you talk through something like that with them?
Sure, of course. Just to give you some ideas to get you started, may not be your total source for it, but what you're looking at when you're analyzing the risk weight is where are you and what ideally would you want to see happen? And I can help you get started on that. I'm happy to.
Right. Well, I guess another thought too, which again, I'm changing directions yet
Yeah.
again, but one of the things that comes up when somebody dies or disabled or something like that is the value of the company. And I know we've had some podcasts about that as well, but again, as one of the points I was making at the beginning is you have to worry about are the key people still there? And if the key person leaves, is that hurting the value of the company? But have you got any thoughts or ideas about specifying what the value of the company is in the contract or continuity plan or?
Well, you certainly did that. You remember that movie Tommy Boy, Big Tom Callahan? Tommy's dad died. He was everything. Remember? He was the life and the spirit and everything of that company. And you're probably that person to your construction company, no doubt. If you're watching this podcast, you are that person. You're the dynamo that makes this happen. And so when something happens to you, people naturally look to you. What do we do now? Well, it was his wishes to do that. How do you know that? Well, it's in writing. It's agreed upon. This is how he wants the company to move forward without him if something happens to him. That makes
Yeah,
sense?
absolutely. Well, I guess the way I think about it is that this is a subject just like life insurance or things like that. Nobody wants to talk about, but it really is the responsible thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I know that from a bonding company, that obviously sometimes they want to make sure that these things are in place.
Yeah.
But when you're thinking about your family and what's going to happen, but we sweep it under the rug or whatever, I believe it's a responsible thing to do. And so, what's your thoughts on that?
I can tell you, my uncle was a insurance agent that got me into the bond business, and he was also an attorney. And he had a tragic accident that he eventually died from. But I was so proud of him after the fact. My aunt had absolutely no expense. He was in critical care unit for 6 months. Can you imagine how expensive that is? And everything from his estate to the taxes to what he wanted done with the estate, he had gotten that knocked out. And he tweaked it regularly. And I can tell you that it was a beautiful thing to see. So I've seen that in action. I've also have a customer that is now continuing to go strong after the death of one of the two owners. And that one of the two owners was absolutely visionary as a leader because
Yeah,
both partners are. But I can tell you that the partner that's remaining really misses what the other partner did. And it's not only do they miss him personally, but they miss what they did for the company. So this is real. In this case, they did all their continuity planning during COVID.
oh,
I mean,
okay. Yeah.
they did a lot of work during COVID for this. So you think you don't have time to do it, but the best time to do it is now.
That old thing about like when's the best time to plant an oak tree?
Yeah.
It would have been 20 years ago, but if you hadn't done it, do it today.
Well, that's a great analogy. Plant that oak tree, folks, and get your continuity plan started. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Also, you can look on our website and see an article where we address some of the practical aspects of this.
Okay.
All right.
Any other closing thoughts, or is that it?
Plant that tree, like you would say, just do it. But
Okay.
you're right. I was thinking when I wrote the article, Wade, that I would end things with do a continuity plan so you can rest in peace now. And I thought, oh, that's creepy stuff. But really, when you get this planning done, it is a peaceful feeling. You're glad you've done it and you can knock it out. It just gives you a lot of peace. So maybe I'll end it on that.
Okay. Well, I agree with what you said too about expecting the unexpected. So thanks for doing that. And thank you all for listening to the Contractor Success Forum, wherever you might be tuning in from. Find us on all major podcast platforms on the contractorsuccessforum.com or the Carpenter CPA's YouTube channel. For more information, be sure to check the show notes for more free resources. If you hadn't already, we would sincerely appreciate it if you would consider subscribing to this channel and ring that notification bell to follow each episode as we post it every week. We sincerely appreciate your support and comments in this journey, and we will look forward to seeing you on the next episode.